July 16, 1945, 5:29 a.m. In the pre-dawn darkness of the Jornada del Muerto desert in New Mexico, an intense flash of white-orange light vaporized the steel tower holding it and sent a shockwave rolling across the basin. 7 years earlier, in a Berlin laboratory, German chemists Otto Hahn and Fritz Strassmann discovered that a uranium atom could be split in two, releasing a small burst of energy. For the community of European scientists who had recently fled fascist persecution, this physical observation triggered immediate panic. If a totalitarian regime successfully scaled this reaction into a weapon, they would possess absolute global dominance. In August 1939, fellow physicists persuaded Albert Einstein to draft a letter to President Franklin D. Roosevelt. The letter warned that German progress in uranium research could yield extremely powerful bombs. What began as an academic finding in a chemistry lab suddenly became a desperate race for survival, triggering a massive, clandestine military-industrial program. By August 1942, the United States was formally at war. The government transferred control of atomic research to the Army Corps of Engineers, establishing the Manhattan Engineer District. To direct this sprawling effort, the military appointed Brigadier General Leslie R. Groves. Groves was a deeply pragmatic administrator who had just finished overseeing the construction of the Pentagon, an expert in managing vast logistical networks. But Groves needed a scientific counterpart. He made a controversial choice, selecting J. Robert Oppenheimer, a brilliant theoretical physicist from Berkeley. Oppenheimer lacked a Nobel Prize, possessed zero administrative experience, and had a history of left-wing political associations that kept him under active FBI surveillance. Yet Groves recognized Oppenheimer's unique intellectual charisma. Together, the strict military commander and the eccentric academic forged an unlikely partnership that would drive the vast scientific machine they were about to build. Groves required isolated, low-population areas to hide the research and production facilities. The military rapidly displaced generations-old settlements and tribal communities to clear land for these covert sites. In the mountain valleys of Oak Ridge, Tennessee, the government built a sprawling industrial complex. These factories housed enormous racetracks of electromagnets and miles of piping designed for a single purpose: enriching the rare isotope uranium-235. Across the country in Washington state, another vast tract of land became the Hanford site. In only 18 months, workers constructed the world's first full-scale nuclear reactor, engineered to breed a completely new synthetic element called plutonium. To maintain security, the military enforced strict compartmentalization. Of the nearly 600,000 people employed by the project, the vast majority performed isolated, repetitive tasks without ever knowing what the materials were for. The United States had essentially constructed a shadow economy larger than the American automobile industry, entirely focused on harvesting invisible subatomic particles. At the atomic level, the mechanics look like this. A single loose neutron collides with the dense nucleus of a uranium-235 atom. The unstable nucleus splits, releasing heat and new neutrons. Gather enough uranium together, a threshold called critical mass, and these freed neutrons strike adjacent atoms. This triggers more splits, releasing more energy and neutrons, creating an accelerating, self-sustaining chain reaction. In December 1942, a team led by Italian physicist Enrico Fermi proved this reaction was physically possible. Deep beneath the University of Chicago's athletic stadium, they successfully initiated and controlled the world's first nuclear pile.
Proving the physics in a controlled laboratory was a massive achievement. The challenge now falling to Oppenheimer's weapons design team in Los Alamos was engineering a mechanism capable of triggering that exact chain reaction in a fraction of a second, inside a falling bomb. The simplest solution was a gun-type weapon, codenamed Little Boy. As the schematic shows, conventional explosives fire a subcritical projectile of uranium down a modified steel barrel into a subcritical target. The high-speed impact forces the two pieces together, achieving critical mass and detonating the weapon. The mechanics were so straightforward that scientists knew it would work without testing it. But separating the uranium-235 isotope was incredibly slow, and the military only had enough material to build a single device. Hanford's reactors were producing plutonium much faster.
But plutonium fissions so rapidly that in a gun barrel design, the projectile would melt and fizzle out before it ever fully reached the target. To utilize plutonium, Oppenheimer's team had to design an entirely different architecture, named Fat Man. In this implosion design, they placed a subcritical plutonium core inside a sphere of high explosive lenses. When detonated simultaneously, the blast wave pushes inward, crushing the core under immense pressure until it achieves critical mass. Symmetrical implosion was a completely unproven concept in physics. The margin for error was almost non-existent. Before the military could rely on the plutonium bomb in combat, the scientists had to prove the mechanism actually worked. That requirement brought the scientific leadership to the New Mexico desert in the early hours of July 16, 1945. They mounted the experimental plutonium device on a 100-foot steel tower, retreated to their bunkers, and waded through a passing thunderstorm. The resulting 21-kiloton detonation exceeded their estimates. The blast scoured the desert floor. The intense thermal radiation melted the asphalt and sand at ground zero, leaving behind a shallow crater lined with radioactive green glass. General Groves and Oppenheimer surveyed the blast site shortly after. The theoretical equations on their chalkboards were now a stark physical reality. Less than a month later, the military deployed both bomb designs over Japan. The uranium device struck Hiroshima on August 6th, followed by the plutonium implosion weapon over Nagasaki 3 days later. The sudden, overwhelming scale of death inflicted by individual weapons brought World War II to an immediate halt. A single aircraft could now erase an entire city. The American atomic monopoly was brief. The immense destructive power demonstrated in Japan soon fueled an arms race with the Soviet Union. Global security was now permanently anchored to the concept of mutually assured destruction. The architects of the weapon faced their own fallout. When Oppenheimer later opposed the development of a more powerful hydrogen bomb, his wartime achievements couldn't protect him. During the height of the Red Scare, his security clearance was revoked, effectively ending his government career. Yet the massive infrastructure built to create the bomb persisted. The secret cities of the Manhattan Project evolved into the modern national laboratory system, pioneering breakthroughs in supercomputing, material science, and nuclear medicine. Today, hundreds of commercial nuclear reactors utilize that exact same controlled chain reaction to boil water and generate electricity for millions of homes. The effort to split the atom stands as a staggering feat of logistics and physics. Humanity solved the absolute limits of matter, and in doing so, handed itself the permanent capacity for its own destruction.